for this panel, we have the tech-driven growth, the software companies powering startup success. It's featuring machine learning and AI manager at Personio, Alex Bannon, the CEO of Rapid Dev, Matt Graham, head of product at Postman Flows, Roderick Raba, and VP of strategy and new products at Carta, Dhruv Dhingra. Welcome, guys.
Okay.
All right. Can everyone hear me? Everyone hear me okay? All right. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. You folks are in for a real treat today. Real treat. Get excited. I'm going to ask a quick question. How many of you, get ready to raise your hand, are building a product? Come on, right? Most people, agency owners, I see some agencies back there not raising your hand. You guys build products too? All right, now keep those hands up. Come on, keep those hands up. If you're building a product, how many of you want it to be an exceptional product? Everybody, right? Everybody wants their product to be exceptional, right? So that's fortunately what our panelists spend most of their day thinking about. How do you build truly exceptional products? So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce who we have. We had Roderick Raba, head of product at Postman Flows. We have Dhruv Dhingra, VP of strategy and new products at Carta, and Alex Bannon, machine learning and AI manager at Personio. Welcome, these guys. All right. So for a bit of context for the audience, why don't you guys, how do your companies work with early stage founders today, and what are some of the common challenges they are facing when you work with them? Go ahead, Alex.
Sure, I'll kick things off. Hello, everybody. It's honestly an honor to be here. Super grateful to Bubblecon and all that. But to answer the question, so we work with early stage founders all the time. So at Personio, and specifically in the AI and ML space, there is a lot of startups, all trying to vie for attention and all try to make sure that they find the right clients and customers. So I would say the difficulty that they have is less about even just getting the meeting and more about demonstrating value, building that trust, and obviously getting to yes. The whole point of these types of conferences, and a lot of people are spending the time networking for the right reason, is you have to really find that fit, right? You have to find the customer, but you also need to get to yes at the end. So I'm not going to belabor the point too much, as I'm on the tech side, and you all probably spend most of your days networking. But that tends to be the difficulty in AI, is how is this different? How is it going to unlock value? But specifically, on the AI and ML space, the trust factor. So many people now, I know in the US in particular, there's less of a focus than in Europe on the legal concerns and things like that, but it's still there. People care about what you're doing with their data. How are you actually going to be doing something valuable for them? And making sure that you're not just running off and building 15 models with their private information. So those are the big three for me.
Nice. What about you, Roderick?
So I work at Postman, and had a great compliment from one of the attendees here. It's like, you work at Postman? Shook my hand. It's like, great tool. It's like, that's the kind of validation you want when you're building a developer product. At Postman, our APIs are our thing. So if you're building an application where you need to work with another service, you're going to do that with an API. You test that API. You learn about that API on Postman. We make that easy with the Postman network, with the editor, and the request builder, et cetera. One of the products that I lead is called Postman Flows, and that's designed for people who are not professional developers per se. They're not software engineers. Maybe they don't have that CS background, but they're builders. They're creators. And I think you all know here that is the future of computing. And our mission statement is essentially change the way people like you interact with the digital world over APIs. And Postman Flows is one way of doing that. I posted an article just last week on LinkedIn about an idea that somebody had, and then they built it essentially on Postman from the front end to the back end. And it was inspired by explaining what I do to my kids. But out of that came a real application that was AI inspired. I think it's an example of something where you have an idea, you want to take it to conception, you can use Bubble, you can use Postman to help make that idea come to reality.
Awesome. So I work at Kara, which hopefully some of you are familiar with. And the way we work with founders is right from the start, as once they incorporate the company, helping them think through their own equity, helping them think through when they're going and raising capital from external investors, how should they be pricing the round. And then as you kind of scale up and hire employees, granting them equity and creating that ownership and making sure those incentives are aligned with as you kind of build out your company. Couple of new things we've been working on, which we believe would help founders like yourself as you kind of scale and hire employees is, how much should we actually be paying the employees we hire, because you're competing for talent against other well-established startups. So it's our job to make sure that we can abstract away the legal tax complexity so that you can do what you do best, which is building exceptional products.
So a lot of our audience here, they're building products and they're getting initial feedback from their user base. Sometimes the market's shifting as well. AI is changing the landscape for everyone. So a lot of folks that we work with too, they reach this point, they have to think through, should I pivot? What's the market telling me? I have all this feedback from my customers. How do you think through if you should pivot? What are the signals? What's just the noise? How do you know when to stay the course? Any advice for the founders out there?
I have to start. I think one thing at least we found building newer products at Kara is to seems obvious advice, but zero in on the audience you're building for, and kind of really narrow down who the persona is. Because sometimes where we've found the most traction and the most successes when we kind of really boil down, okay, are we building this for the CFO of a company? Are we building it for the head of finance of the company? Who are we really building this for? So whenever we've come to those pivot moments, that's what has helped us. The other thing I would add is, you guys can look this up offline, but there is a wonderful video by Peter Thiel called "Competition is for Losers," in which he really talks about how you kind of avoid competition and think of your product in concentric circles. So instead of building for the CFO company, can I build for the CFO of a Series A company with 10 to 20 employees, and then build a moat there and move further up the stack. So that's kind of the philosophy we applied as we have thought of building new products and making that decision to conclude whether something is working or not, which is doing it with that lens.
So I was a founder, started a company which went through an acquisition 3 years ago. And one of the things that's special about a founder or an entrepreneur is it starts with an idea, but you have to persevere. That is the key defining characteristic, is that perseverance. And if you're not out there selling all the time, meaning talking to customers all the time, you're going to build what you think you want, but not necessarily what you can sell. And a business requires that you can sell something. So it's differentiation, and that's what really turns you from a founder and entrepreneur to somebody who can build a successful business, is doing that transition from, I really want to build this, but my customers really want that. And the more people you talk to, you have to be able to sort of think about where the emerging patterns are, because you don't want to build one-off solutions because you're chasing maybe a big contract or a potential payday, and then you end up figuring out, hey, I can't replicate this for a next customer. If you're trying to create a business, you have to look at the generalities that you can get to. Otherwise, you're a consulting business or a consulting shop. Nothing wrong with that, but you have to be honest with yourself about what you're building and what you're creating. And at Postman and the Flows product, I can relate to this very clearly, because coming into Postman, I was coming off an acquisition. I really got excited about this product. It's a low-code tool for working with APIs and building applications out of APIs. And my thought was, oh, this is really cool. We're going to build something where people connect APIs together, deploy them to the cloud, and run these APIs at scale. And I came in and understood the Postman user, and it was like, I just want to explain to somebody else how to use my APIs. Or I want to learn how to use these APIs to solve the problems that I have. It's a completely different product. And we only learn that by actually going out there and talking to customers and understanding what they are. Two different forks in the road. One very exciting, but not where the business tells you need to go. And you only get that by continuously being out there, talking to customers, and getting that signal.
Well, going third is so much easier than going first. I get to just +1 everything. So I want to connect on a couple things there. One was personas. I really think I want to +1 that 100 times. Is you need to focus on who your user is, but not be beholden to one idea. You should always be adapting who your persona is, who are you targeting, what does your user look like, and if you can, print that out, like put that on the wall. Because in the end, you're building for users, right? The other thing, so I realized I didn't do too much of an intro about who I am, but I've also been a founder and been on that side and not just on trying to get other companies to onboard with us. And I started a company back in 2016 that was basically QR code ordering at your table, and it failed. And 4 years later, in the peak of COVID, when everyone was depressed, all I did was scan QR codes on tables and have food ordered to me, and that was a bit depressing. But in that startup and that growth phase, I was constantly pivoting. If you're not adapting what you're trying to build, caring about your persona, caring about your product and where it's going, and listening to your customers and listening to your users, you're going to fail. And I failed for other reasons, I hope, but that's definitely a big one. And so, yeah, my general recommendation is don't tie yourself to one idea. We're in this room because we have great ideas. And so much of that means that we're like, no, I'm right, and the customer is wrong. I just need to find the right user. If you're doing that, or you catch yourself doing that, you have to abandon it. Listen to the data, listen to users, see what's actually connecting with people, care about that persona, and just feel like you have to pivot. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, like some of this may sound straightforward to you folks. You've read this in books, but you really got to get out there, talk to customers, set a goal. How many customers are you going to talk to every single week? Something like that, right? It's easy to hear it, but got to implement it. So moving on, like a lot of folks that we work with, our partners, they're getting bombed by feedback from their users, right? So they're talking to users, good, step one. Now we got a bunch of feedback. Some of it's really short-term stuff. Can you move this? Can you do this quick little thing? Some of it's distracting them from the long-term product vision that they have. So how do you think about balancing those short-term customer requests and feedback with like the long-term product vision that you want to ultimately get to?
He should go first.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
I have to go first? Oh, okay. Fair enough. It's the forever question, right? So I will say the analogy that I like to make is the dinghy versus the aircraft carrier, right? The Googles, the Amazons, the Fangs, they're at the aircraft carrier level. In order to pivot, they're talking about quarters. They're talking about, or they're buying up bases and they're doing quick acquisitions or things like that. But it's slow almost intentionally. Versus where I think a lot of the people in this room are is the one advantage that we have is that flexibility, is that you're in a dinghy and you can swerve, you can make changes quickly. So North Stars are incredibly important, right? You need it for where are you going as a company to set that direction, to make sure that your team is aligned and involved. But it needs to be able to change. If you're always tied to one North Star and you're not listening to that sort of customer feedback that we talked about in the last question, then again, you're really going to be working uphill. So I would say embrace that you're small, try new things, listen to that customer feedback, specifically listen to the data again. And so the reason I'm going to hammer on the data is we have so many good tools now to aggregate customer feedback, to do analysis and NLP of what are they saying in different avenues. So, data can be manipulated, as we all know, so you need to watch out for biases, but it is incredibly valuable. So it's balancing customer feedback, balancing what they want with your gut and your intuition, which is a big part of it, let's be real. Sometimes it's just luck, sometimes just gut that makes you successful. But balancing those two, I guess I'll throw out a Bezos quote, because why not? But he always said, if the data and the anecdote disagree, the anecdote wins. So don't over-rely. Don't just be like, hey, the data that I manipulated said do it this way. But embrace that smallness. Embrace that ability to just try new things and see if they connect, see how it's changing, the user patterns, your ARR, the retention, how much they're on the website, where are they paying attention. Like, you need to be diving into these details, at least at the aggregate level.
Yep. I think balancing on that Bezos quote, like, instincts matter, and sometimes data also matters, but trust your instincts. That's why you're founders. I think an interesting thing about feedback is it's a gift. If you build a product or a feature and you ship it and nobody cares, it's pretty depressing. If you put something out there, let's say you find out, hey, it's broken, nobody's complaining, it's pretty depressing. Like, you want the signal, even if it's hard to get that feedback. Every data point is potentially useful for you. So you should be thinking about, when you're building, how am I going to get the feedback? Is it by talking to customers? Is it by adding telemetry to my application? Is it by some other forms of measurement? Everything you're doing should be like, how do I validate I'm doing the right thing? Going back to the previous point, like, you need to be going out there and talking to people, and sometimes if you're building an app, the app is the way you talk to people. So get the data so you can help inform your decisions. But it doesn't mean like every little data point is something you react to. Like, you have to analyze. I think the other thing about short-term versus long-term is you have a vision. Like, you're trying to get somewhere. The path may not be very clear, and so the pivots that you do along the way are informed by the things you learn. And sort of short-term, sometimes when you're making a decision about a pivot or what you're doing short-term, like, you always have to balance that. Is my long-term vision, my thesis here, still valid? And if not, question that. But you're building essentially a series of steps to get you there, and every step is informed by both your instincts and the things you're learning. You absolutely have to talk to customers, both in the short term or long term. Moving a one-person company is very easy. You just make your mind up and you go. 5 to 10-person company, it's already hard. 50 plus, forget it. That's why you have a hidden advantage. Like, eventually you get to be big enough. Those are different problems to solve. But when you're starting off, it's a gift, and feedback is very valuable.
Yeah, building on, I totally agree. Feedback is a gift. I have one piece of controversial advice, which is learn to say no, or at least say no, not now. And the reason I say that is when you're going through this process of ideation and building out the product and adding features, you'll get a ton of feedback, and some customers would want X, Y, Z, and others would want A, B, C. You got to figure out like what is, for the lack of a better word, minimum viable product, and what does that distill down to? Because sometimes when you're trying to please every customer, you might build a hodgepodge of product which doesn't work for any of them. So going back to our last conversation, persona, feedback, and then iterating out which product features really resonate. So I think that's how I kind of think about it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, especially in the Bubble ecosystem, because you can just build so fast, right? You're like, oh, you need this? I'll get it done tomorrow.
Right.
Or, well, not even tomorrow, just right now. We'll push it live in an hour. So you don't have that resource constraint that you have in traditional development. And as a side effect of that, you just kind of dump everybody's customer feedback, all your user feedback into the app, and it sort of becomes a mess. So saying no is not just about staying focused, but also making sure the changes you make are very intentional. So.
And be ruthless about it. Like,
yeah.
How you prioritize, you absolutely have to be ruthless.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes at our agency, we'll tell a client that we're working with, look, if we can get 100 people to request this feature or adamantly want this, then we'll build it for free for you, right? Like, set a barrier for you to achieve that. So yeah, guys, wrapping up with the last question here. There's so much changing in the ecosystem, especially with AI. We have enough time for all of us to go through this, but what do you think all the founders, entrepreneurs, developers in the room need to kind of have line of sight towards, because what's changing in the product development space right now?
I mean, can I be a manager of AI if I don't say AI to this question? I think, look, AI is definitely in a hype cycle, right? Like crypto and Bitcoin and so many things. So I don't know exactly where we are on that cycle. And I think it's probably coming down more than going up, if you look at, overvalued NVIDIA stock and things like that. But it's going to be useful. It's going to settle into a pattern that you need to embrace these tools in some way. So I know there's a lot of skepticism, and even when I look around engineers, the hesitance to adapt to things like Copilot, or other people who are very hesitant to try out large language models or throw questions into ChatGPT. I think that hesitancy is going to hurt you more than help. So is every AI tool going to be useful? Absolutely not. There's no way. But there are things here that will be. So don't be scared of the AI tool that helps to aggregate feedback effectively, that helps with planning roadmaps, with the new tools that you can use every day. Because the flip side is you'll find yourself behind competition or not moving as quickly. So just use anything that you possibly can that helps move your product forward, or at least moves your processing and your way of working forward. So,
AI, I'm assuming we're talking about generative AI right now. It's absolutely changing everything. I mean, I look at my kids who use it with, hey, generate 10 more math problems of this shape, and then they go through it and then learn, hey, wait, my answer doesn't match. Who's right? It's like, work through it. That's a teaching tool. Your AI is not replacing any coder in this room. I will take that bet any day of the week. But as a capability to help you get to your vision faster, 100%, and you need to be thinking about how can I use AI as a better tool to get me there faster. There's so many examples I can give you, from building complete websites to refining your idea, using it as a sounding board. Even though it's some things that it says are nonsensical, there is something there about sort of that conversation back and forth that helps you refine your own thinking. So even if you're not integrating the product, I use it sometimes to prepare my own talks. So being short on time, happy to talk more through it offline. But yeah, I think absolutely need to be thinking about AI.
Well, to keep talking about AI, I think one thing AI is kind of changing in the market from where I sit is, like, instead of people selling a software tool which you can use, which a human being can use, people can for the first time sell the work itself, which I think is really exciting for people who are building companies out today, because they're not constrained by the legacy software which exists today. So what I mean by that is, like, until today, people were selling software for resolving customer tickets, but they can actually now sell customer service as customer service agent as a service, which I think opens up a much bigger market and also allows entrepreneurs like yourself to do something which is not being done by the current incumbents. So for me, that's like a game changer.
Awesome, guys. So look out into the crowd. Take your bets. Which one's going to be the next unicorn? I think I see one over there. Next year, this time, we're going to have our first unicorn app built on Bubble, partly because of the advice you've given, guys. So thank you very much for joining us.